King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at kingcomics.ca, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby. Hey, what is going on, everybody? I am Maximus Rex, and this is Big Baby Reviews. So I know what you're saying. Just like a few episodes back with the Autobots audiobook, the Transformers audiobook, you are saying this is not a comic book. It is not. It's a grungy, old, dirty-looking box, right? I don't know if you can see, if I bring it up close, maybe it says Marvel 1 on there, right? So what this basically represents, this is the original box that I kept my Marvel 1, superhero trading card series in, all right? One thing I do want to mention, don't mind my mangled finger here. You might have to look at it a little bit. I also got cut over here, but I don't know how noticeable that is on the camera. I try to manicure as best as I can before a shoot. I do cut my nails and shave my knuckles. All right, so going through this Marvel 1 series, we're going to split it up into all the different sections. Why are we looking at this? We are still on the road to my singularity, the moment where I kind of, really dive in at a fairly early age and, decide to dedicate most of my life, at least at that point, to drawing, illustration, and hopefully becoming a comic book artist, cartoonist. So this is another step forward towards that, and that's why we're looking at it. As for, again, the finger mauling here, I was working on a sculpture for my band Mad Parish for video shoot. It's called the Cathedron, or the Cathedron, and it's a sculpture that represents this kind of city robot giant church-faced creature with a city on its head. That sounds kind of crazy, but I'll be posting some pictures so you'll see what that looks like in the video part right about here. And I do want to throw out a shout out to Mike Dubish, because he is the original artist of the Cathedron. He designed the Mad Parish album cover for the first album, which is called Procession, which, look it up, madparish.com. Most, downloading platforms have our songs there. You can check them out on YouTube if you're interested. Just type in, Mad Parish Procession. And there's another album on the way as well, pretty soon for release in the fall. So back in the day when Procession came out, I played bass for Mad Parish, and now back after a few years playing drums. So there it is, Marvel Series 1 cards. We are going to start off by looking at obviously what they start you off with, the superheroes, right? So as I'm kind of, starting to buy comics myself, choosing things that are still kind of related to video games, like the Double Dragon comic you saw previously. I'm also, for some reason, really into cards, and I have been for a few years, if I remember correctly, into different sorts, video game cards or any kind of, I remember the sticker books, the Panini sticker books I was really big on. So these here are kind of really my entryway into the Marvel Universe. One thing I do want to mention before we get started, though, is that, at that time, I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, in the comic book business. Obviously, I'm just kind of starting out. I basically don't know much of Marvel continuity, and this series is going to help me figure that out, the series of cards. But I know nothing about Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and that long-standing battle of who did what and this and that. But I do find it disheartening that, at that point in the legal battles between the two, there's literally no mention of Jack Kirby in any of the set here. At least, I don't think so. I didn't sit down and read all the descriptions in the back, but I really don't think there's literally one mention. I could be wrong. If some of you out there can point one out, that would be great, and, post it, whatever. But I don't recall one, and having flipped through them real quickly, there's really no mention of Jack Kirby. And as I go along the way, I will show you, a lot of what we now know to be the creations of Jack Kirby, a lot of the characters, right? And obviously we'll end the set with something. If you get to the end of the video, you'll see that last card. We'll talk about it more at that point. All right. So here we go. So, I'm a young guy collecting cards, getting interested in the Marvel Universe. And what this does is basically, let's look at the first card, Captain America, classic Marvel character, kind of the, I don't know if he's technically the first, but you know, that first iconic, you know, Marvel character back when they were timely comics, just pre-World War II. And Captain America was actually created by Jack Kirby and Joe Simon. They were in a partnership, and that lasted 20 odd years, I believe, up until like the mid 50s or something like that. So they did, you know, at least from the beginning, kind of have the co-creator credit on this. Captain America, Stanley has nothing to do with. All right, so I'll just kind of, you know, what was great about these cards is, you know, they're all cool poses. Here you got the Hulk. Pretty sure that's by Simonson. So yeah, all cool poses, kind of easy to reproduce because I believe the art was drawn pretty small, so it's not too detailed where it's kind of out of reach when you're a kid. So a lot of these were fun to copy. I discovered later that a lot of these artists, again, I think, and I'm not sure, but I will point out, I think that's Walt Simonson. There's a lot of Mark Bagley, you know, and I recognize that later. At the time, I had no idea. I always thought this drawing of Professor X was odd. Just the fact that these lines, I don't know if you can see that, I'll bring them up close. These lines they've added on his head here for reflection or light reflection or something, just makes it look like he's got hair or he's wearing a wig. You know, very odd for a character who's kind of specifically bald in his design, right? So little confusions like that are when you start, you know, looking at artwork and comic books, you kind of, you know, things like that confuse you because I would then see the X-Men comics and see that he was bald. So what's going on here? You know, isn't that what an editor's for? Little things like that. So yeah, so this is how I kind of learned, you know, about the Marvel heroes, who they were, possibly Jim Lee here. And yeah, so these cards have all the facts on the back, you know, some stats, some history of the character, right? So that's, you know, you learn about the individual characters, their powers, right? I mean, it's all pretty straightforward, but as a kid, you know, enjoying kind of discovering the universe. Mark Bagley, possibly. I know Mark Bagley did some of these. So yeah, again, these, I'll go a little faster because, I mean, we got a lot of stuff to look at. Some standouts. This is definitely Arthur Adams, right? Walt Simonson, pretty sure. More. So again, as a kid, these were great poses. There's another Art Adams. To copy and kind of figure out the anatomy and stuff, right? You got some great stuff here. Doctor Strange. Okay, and you learned about the various teams. I just thought that was a pretty cool. Jim Lee. I'm almost sure that's Jim Lee. So you learn about the various teams, the X-Men, you know, the Avengers, Fantastic Four. They're all in here. Arthur Adams again. Elektra. I mean, the Wasp. So it's pretty specific. All their heroes are in there. Of course, next we get the villains. We start off with the Kingpin. And again, same basic idea. I'll go fairly quickly, point out maybe some, I'm pretty sure that's Art Adams. I will point out all the Art Adams in here. I can't really figure out who this is, but I really think it's a great drawing, great shot of Sabretooth. And it seems like, you know, you have some of the more modern artists doing occasional, you know, pinups here or drawings. And then you've got some more old school kind of Marvel house style artists, right? Pretty sure this is Mark Bagley. Pretty sure. And these are all the villains that you know, right? Black Cat, Venom. That's a cool shot of Venom. I drew that and copied that a bunch of times. So we got some doubles here, obviously. Oh, we got this guy will become super famous. I always thought that was a cool drawing. Again, Art Adams, his style always stands out. Especially in these cards here, it's pretty obvious. That I could figure out. I didn't know like the artist names, but I could pick out that guy specifically had a much different style to all the other guys. This is kind of a cool snapshot of the time, right? So this rookie section was interesting because at the time, not knowing much about comics, this is kind of the stuff you would seek out after you'd gone through these cards and stuff. Because like technically the rookies should be the hot new players, hot new characters, right? So Ghost Rider, definitely one of them. I ended up getting those early Ghost Rider comics for sure. I mean, Ghost Rider's a great visual, right? I don't know who drew this. I mean, it's all right. It's you know, typical with the speed lines and stuff, which is great. I just find maybe the fire is just very subdued. Maybe it could have been a little more exaggerated there, make it a little more dynamic. But I mean, an okay shot overall. We got the new Deathlock at that point, because there had been another Deathlock character before that, who kind of looks the same, but it's just a guy who gets turned into a cyborg, I guess. Kind of like RoboCop kind of idea, or Robo Soldier, I guess. Just that this new one had a different identity. Didn't go very far, I don't think, that one. Guardians of the Galaxy, at that point, Jim Valentino doing that series, he actually did kind of, you know, have a buzz going around that book at that time, and he was doing pretty well before he went off to Image on it. One thing that I find interesting about Guardians of the Galaxy, personally, artistically, is the fact that a lot of the early covers were inked by the Image guys before they were the Image guys. So it's Jim Valentino doing either breakdown pencils or pencils, maybe fairly tight. And then you've got, you know, Rob Liefeld inking a cover or a few covers, Tom McFarlane, Eric Larson, I'm pretty sure. Anyways, all, like I said, those early Image guys did a few inking jobs on the Guardians of the Galaxy covers that the part of the series that was covered by Jim Valentino. So it starts here, 1990. Pretty awesome year in comics, at least for me. So 1990, if I'm buying this, I got to go back. I'm either 9 or 10. You know, 1990, I'm 10 till December, and then, you know, I'm probably still collecting these throughout 1991. New Warriors, I had that comic as well. Pretty fun comic when you're a kid. You know, teen heroes. I guess that was my first teen hero book. And the artwork by, again, Bagley, which was, I always thought Bagley was at least very serviceable. And, you know, he got better, and I enjoy his art generally, you know. I don't find he specifically has a house style. It's similar to house style. Maybe not as exciting as the Image guys, but it's a little more solid. You know what I mean? Like, anatomy-wise. Nomad, had that book. 1 or 2 issues, I think, and I kind of dropped off. It really wasn't that interesting. I can't remember anything particularly good about it, other than, I think, the art by S. Clark Hawbacher. I'm mangling the name, but the art on that first thing was good. They were going, I feel like, for like a lone wolf and cub kind of vibe, as he's carrying a baby around on his back and he's going around, you know, shooting people and stuff. You know, interesting visually. I just don't know how much substance there is behind the character. Fool Killer, no idea. Never really got into Fool Killer. And there we go. So this next section is what kind of clued me in. And these next 2 sections, I should say. So famous battles. These were cool because you would find out about, I mean, it says it's pretty self-explanatory, famous battles, right? Thing versus Hulk. Sounds cool. Looks cool. Fantastic Four versus Galactus. I now know that this is, you know, the Jack Kirby, I'll throw in Stan Lee trilogy, Fantastic Four issues, the introduction of Galactus and the Silver Surfer, right? So, again, I will mention Kirby. First famous battle, Thing versus Hulk, drawn by Jack Kirby. Both Hulk and Thing and the Fantastic Four created and designed by Jack Kirby. All right. Over here, famous battles, famous history of the Marvel Universe. Right. Galactus created by Jack Kirby. Silver Surfer, actually, only character Stan Lee ever admitted that Jack Kirby created on his own publicly. All right. There's double. Fantastic Four versus Doctor Doom. Who created Doctor Doom? Jack Kirby. Who drew their first fight? Jack Kirby. Thor versus Surtur. Let me just check the date on those. That's the Walt Simonson stuff, so nothing to do with Kirby, other than wholly inspired by Kirby. Spider-Man is not Kirby, so he's Ditko. So Ditko's kind of in the same situation as Jack Kirby, and as so far as, you know, the basic design and kind of basic story background of Peter Parker is the creation of Steve Ditko and not Stan Lee. So Steve Ditko being the artist who plotted and drew the early Spider-Man issues up to somewhere near the mid-30s. 1 to like 33, I believe. Daredevil versus Bullseye. This is cool. This is Frank Miller stuff, right? That's why I learned about that stuff. Because when you talk about Daredevil versus Kingpin and Bullseye and stuff, it is the Frank Miller run and no other. I'm not sure about this. I would say it's probably in Silver Surfer and probably, yeah, there we go. So by John Buscema, this is, the much critiqued Silver Surfer series that Jack Kirby was very pissed off he was not able to draw. It was given to another artist. He has said in interviews that he felt Stan Lee just took the character away from him. And this is another kind of nail in the coffin for Jack Kirby eventually seeking work at DC Comics rather than Marvel. He got fed up with not having control over his characters. Captain America versus Red Skull, definitely Jack Kirby. Tales of Suspense, 1966, 100%. Okay. When it gets to the X-Men, then we're probably talking, when it comes down to famous battles, we're talking about John Byrne, Terry Austin as the art team, and Chris Claremont, right? He's kind of the guy who has the classic run on X-Men. Great artwork throughout. I feel like these were done probably pretty quickly in a small scale, which helps to make it go faster, right? This is more Chris Claremont stuff, I think. Yeah, X-Men versus Avengers. Yeah, X-Men versus Magneto. X-Men versus Fantastic Four is, I'm not quite sure who's behind that creatively. Fall of the Mutants, didn't follow it. Wasn't into those comics yet. So these cards at this point were allowing me to learn about that stuff, the backstory. So when I did eventually kind of start buying more Marvel comics, I started to get a better inkling of the overall continuity. Not that that's important really overall as you age, but as a kid, it just, for some reason it really matters. So these are more famous battles I don't know that much about, so I'll just move on. Spider-Man versus Venom. That is wholly based on Todd McFarlane on Amazing Spider-Man, creating the visual for Venom. You could argue Dave McLeany, the writer, possibly sowed the seeds for Venom along in, the series right before Venom actually appears. But the visual is definitely McFarlane, right? Nick Fury versus Hydra, I'm going to assume that's Steranko stuff. Yeah, great run. Check that out. Very psychedelic. Armor Wars, I was never really into Iron Man that much. Daredevil versus Wolverine, these are like gimmicky kind of, exhibition matches. Daredevil versus Punisher, possibly from the Frank Miller run, I would assume. No, this is 1988, so then we're talking... I should have guessed from the bandana, the almost 90s, late 80s series where Will Spertasio drew this fight, which is actually filled with a lot of really awesome art. Spider-Man vs. Green Goblin, starts with Ditko and kind of culminates with John Romita Jr. mostly on the art. Few battles, obviously. Spider-Man Hobgoblin, that's a bit later, 70s, 80s maybe. Hulk versus Wolverine, well, that's an ongoing thing that they milk every once in a while, which is cool and fun. But I'm assuming this harkens back to the original. Nope, sorry. This would be referencing the Todd McFarlane Incredible Hulk issues where the Hulk is gray and where he fights Wolverine. That iconic cover where Wolverine has his claws out and you can see the Hulk's reflection in it. Art Adams, that's all that stands out here. Great art. This was always cool. I believe that's the Mike Zeck, 1986, possibly Mike Zeck. Mike Zeck, did the cover of that issue. Not sure he drew the insides. He could have, though. I could be wrong. So we'll just blaze, because now, as you can see, we're kind of in the... Wolverine vs. Sabretooth is a good kind of rivalry, I guess is a better term than famous battles, as here they talk about one specific battle, but there have been many. But yeah, as we move ahead in these famous battles, they're not as classic. Thor versus Loki, I'll point that out. Jack Kirby for sure. And we're back to the beginning. And as I mentioned, the second category too is going to drive some of these points home. So MVC, Most Valuable Comics. And what they're probably pointing to is the fact that these are like the iconic early Marvel comics. So super important. First issue that kind of kicked off the Marvel Universe. As before this, I believe it was Atlas Comics they were called at that time, or Timely. It changes for legal reasons and things. And they were kind of down in the dirt doing monster comics, not doing that well. And as soon as Fantastic Four kind of introduced some, at this point, limited superhero elements, they were meant to kind of be monsters, right? That's kind of where the inspiration came from, as they were doing monster comics at the time. That's why they're all kind of, horrified by their powers a little bit. And if you check out the first issue, and this cover as well kind of implies that. And they're being attacked by one of their, classic giant monsters from the 50s. So it's kind of where the monsters phase into the superhero stuff. Pointed out, this is Jack Kirby, right? He designed the Fantastic Four. X-Men, Jack Kirby cover, drew the first few issues, I believe. Jack Kirby designed the X-Men originally. Spider-Man, Ditko gets credit, which is great. He did design this look of Spider-Man, but the original Spider-Man concept was actually, and it's been proven, drawn out by Jack Kirby. It's kind of a more a fly-like character than a spider specifically. And I mean, like, he resembled the Fly, who's not sure which comic company now has that. For a while, Archie had the Fly. So he was Fly-like, I'll put it that way. And Ditko kind of redesigned him and changed his backstory and the Peter Parker backstory. So instead of kind of Jack Kirby's ideas, he found a ring or something and turned into kind of a superhero, kind of a Power Rangers kind of thing, I guess. And Ditko just created that kind of Batman type dual identity, Spider-Man and Peter Parker, you know, the teenager. Still, Jack Kirby has a hand in that. Punisher, wholly a 70s creation, and he is basically a ripoff of, I think the book was called The Executioner or The Assassin or something like that. There's these, like, those kind of books in the 70s, pulp books that were being produced. He's inspired by that. This is Jack Kirby reintroducing the idea of Thor into comics for the third time. He did it in like the 40s and then the 50s again. Reinterprets kind of the Norse mythology. So this is Jack Kirby wholeheartedly designed Thor for Marvel. This is 70s stuff. The Avengers, every character here, Hulk, Iron Man, Ant-Man, the Wasp, Thor, and Loki, all designed by Jack Kirby. Ditko for Spider-Man, right? 70s Dave Cockrum designed those new costumes and stuff. Jill Kane actually designed this mask, which was a little bit different. So take Wolverine out. He was designed by a bit of a committee originally, and John Romita Jr., who was like the artistic director around this time, who had drawn lots of Marvel comics in the 60s and still in the 70s, obviously. Classic Frank Miller cover. Wolverine's first appearance wore that weird mask originally, which again Gil Kane changed on the cover, and that's what they kept going with because they just decided to look cooler, which they're probably right. Iron Man, designed by Jack Kirby. Avengers, Giant Man is another character we haven't seen yet. All designed by Jack Kirby. Next, we have teams, and then we've already mentioned these, so, I mean, I'll just go through them quickly. I always thought it was odd how big Wolverine's head was in this shot. I'm not wrong, right? His head's really big, especially since he's supposed to be fairly short in the comics, 5'3". Also, Forge, right? I would later find out that that's a mustache. But here I wasn't sure if it was a mustache or like he had some weird scowly mouth. I don't know how else to describe it. Worst Gambit I've ever seen. Definitely. I believe this is Bagley. I'm not 100% sure. Great artist usually just hits the mark. It does not hit the mark, rather, sorry, on Gambit at all. All right. This is a great drawing. It seems like older Arthur Adams, though, than most of the stuff in the series. Pretty sure it's him. Real quick, nothing really came of Cloak and Dagger, not much. The New Mutants got huge. This is a really kind of pedestrian drawing of them because at this point, Rob Liefeld's drawing them, and they're way more exciting looking than this. Whatever you think of his art, it pops a lot more than what's going on here. This looks like they took a family portrait. The original X-Men as X-Factor at the time, looking kind of dour. And no one I really want to mention. This was cool. This is from the Eric Larson run, Sinister Six. I'm pretty sure. And I'm almost certain this is Eric Larson or Bagley trying to do an Eric Larson. And some more villains. And now we get into the stuff I cared not about, even as a kid. Spider-Man being funny and making jokes. I have to assume this is like Stan Lee's thing. And he thinks he's funny and witty, and he's parodying the Marvel characters. And, you know, maybe I'll read one to you, one random one. And just to kind of give you the level of humor that's going on here, you know. And, you know, what you'll find out, I think, about Stan Lee, you'll understand why I feel like this is just a bit of like hack writing. So So here we go. Thor, your mystical hammer can do just about anything. And if e'er I retire as a superhero, I have a big future as a carpenter. Like, I can literally hear them. That's like, even as a kid, I thought that was one of the lamest jokes ever. At this point, I've seen RoboCop, I've seen, Commando, I've seen, like, punny one-liners, lots of them. This is super tame, like, compared to anything said in Commando or any of those cool 80s movies I really enjoyed. Here we go. What's it like living in Asgard? It's kind of like Earth, only we don't get cable TV. Like, how flat is that? Horrible. And all these jokes are like that. So I like to assume that Stan Lee wrote these. He thought he was doing some great stuff. He has a history. He back in the day, he tried those picto, I don't know what you call them. They're comic books, but done with pictures, right? And you kind of fill in the captions and make funny comments and stuff. This is what this reminds me of, only with like Marvel superheroes. And again, just super lame jokes. Lame. And to finish off this episode, we're going to look at this card, which makes me want to puke. All right. Why is that? Let me explain. Clearly, as a kid, when I saw this, I kind of gobbled up what, the official public history of Marvel was. They're calling him Mr. Marvel. His name's Stan Lee. So, even back then, and his face is painted like, every part is a different Marvel character. So obviously as a kid, I'm going to assume, this is truthful information, and this is the guy who created all the Marvel universe, right? So we're going to focus specifically on this card. So we do, just like the superheroes, have his stats, a picture, a headshot of him. So height, 6 foot. That could be a lie. It's Stan Lee. Weight, 155 pounds. Comics written, uncountable. Yeah, because, who actually wrote and how many, it's definitely murky. How much he could actually claim credit for, probably not as much as he is claiming credit for. No prizes awarded. This is something Marvel used to do back in the day. I won't even say more about it. Favorite sayings: "Nuff said," "True believer," "Face front," "Excelsior," because Stan Lee is nothing if not about just, sound bites, I think. He speaks in sound bites generally. First appearance in Marvel comic, Fantastic Four number 10. So he did actually appear in the background or something, I guess. I don't know for sure. First published Marvel Comics work, text story in Captain America number 3, May 1941. That is true. That is the first thing that he wrote, and it's just a text piece. But yeah, no, he can claim credit to that for sure. That one is all his. So what does it say here? Aided by some of the most talented artists in the comics biz. So right away he's implying that they helped him, but Stan Lee created virtually the entire Marvel universe and revolutionized comic book writing as we know it today. Okay. So let's point out right away that all these talented artists mostly created the Marvel universe, and Stan Lee was really more of an editor. If you look at what Jack Kirby said about the situation, that's what he said, is that Stan Lee was basically his editor. And as his editor, it was his choice to change the dialogue and stuff. And that's what Stan Lee would do sometimes, and then claim that he was, quote unquote, the writer, which, in that case, technically, Jack Kirby plots it. And if you change the dialogue, all you do is dialogue. You're not the writer. Because writing entails both the plot and the dialogue, right? Among the hordes of characters co-created by Stan, because he has to say that legally, right, are the Fantastic Four, nope. Spider-Man, nope. The Avengers, nope. The Incredible Hulk, nope. The X-Men, nope. Thor, all of them. Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is Steve Ditko as well. Heck, this card's not big enough to list them all. Yeah, well, okay. I will say this, okay? Artists would create the characters, and Stan Lee would then, and not just the characters, but the storylines, the plot lines, draw them up and send them to Stan Lee. That's what's called the Marvel method, right? So, they say he revolutionized the comics writing. I think they're implying that by using the Marvel method, he revolutionized it. If in the sense that, because he created that, it meant less work for him and more credit. And ultimately, when you have credit in publishing, in the publishing business, it also means money. That was his true intent there. What does it say here? Stan's longest unbroken stint on any Marvel comic was on Fantastic Four, which he wrote for a whopping 114 issues, starting with number 1. All right. They say that Jack Kirby plotted that till he left Marvel from issue 1 to 101, I believe, or 102, somewhere around there. All right. So Stan Lee apparently wrote all those hundreds of issues with Jack Kirby, and all of a sudden, when Jack Kirby disappears, he only draws another writes rather for maybe another year, and then kind of drops it. And a lot of people have said that those issues are very lackluster, and basically try to rehash storylines from the previous stuff plotted by Jack Kirby. So those are my thoughts on Stan Lee. Okay. Stan Lee was a great editor. He was a great marketing guy. He publicized Marvel, got it out there, made it helped make it popular for sure, 100%. Not taking anything away from him on that side. He's a great kind of marketing guy. Maybe changing a bit of dialogue here and there. The issue most artists and creatives will have with Stan Lee is the fact that he took credit for edits, basically, is what he was doing, on the dialogue and stuff. So to take credit and then also money away from the artist. Again, the Marvel method. What is it? It's basically, before the Marvel method, it was typical for comics to be completely, again, plotted, scripted out, how many panels on each page, and dialogue, right? Everything was there, and you just kind of drew what was described. The Marvel method was, Stan Lee saying, "Oh, I need him fighting in the jungle this issue," and then the artist kind of really drawing up that whole story and how they get to the jungle, and what happens in the jungle, and who they encounter in the jungle, and where does the jungle lead to the next kind of storyline or whatever. That was all up to the artist, and that's a lot of work. If you do this and you're watching this and you make your own comics as well, you know how much work that is. So for Stan Lee to come in and do that, unfortunately, those were the times. That's how it was. So I think a lot of these artists just accepted it because they didn't know any better. There was no other option. There were no other options at that time, and that's just how the industry worked, right? So you need trailblazers eventually to kind of push the industry towards a certain direction of being a little more open, at least to supporting creators and creatives. Neil Adams in the 70s kind of pushed really hard there, and later on, say what you will about the Image guys, but they at least showed and inspired people that you could break away from the mainstream and the big companies, do your own thing, and be successful at it, right? Whatever you think of the of the quality of their product, right? So there you have it. I'll finish this episode again just with looking at this card again. Spider-Man Ditko, Captain America, that's Jack Kirby. Silver Surfer here, that's Jack Kirby. I don't know who else is in here. The Fantastic Four represented in the hand here. All ultimately Jack Kirby creations that Stan Lee ended up editing and dialoguing over stories plotted by Jack Kirby. So I'm going to leave it at that. Great set. Got me started off on the road to comics. We're approaching the singularity. I thank you for watching. Very much appreciate it. You guys have a great day, and I will see you soon.